Right now is a really good time to be a fan of punk music. Hardcore is having a great moment. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, eggpunk is exploring the less serious side of punk music. There have been great garage punk and punk blues albums lately, and it's a good time to explore Korean and Japanese punk scenes as well, amongst other punk scenes around the globe. From Myanmar to Mexico, there are still young, energetic bands with their own takes on punk music. And you have some modern punk bands who are doing their own thing in a very unique way. Back in July, I made a video called Punk's Not Dead, which was covering 6 of my favorite punk bands from right now. Well, the comment section was just a flood of new bands. A lot of them were really great, and I've been making my way through them ever since. Since it's been 5 months, I figured now is about time for a follow-up. So we're going to talk about some of the bands that were brought up in the comments and some others that I've come across. But with the huge amount of options, I needed to limit it down a bit, and since my last video was very dude-heavy, I thought I'd focus on some female-led bands this time. And by female-led, I'm focusing on who is doing the vocals, who is often writing the vocals. I feel like that's probably the best metric. And obviously, there are a lot of other great punk bands that don't fit this particular set of stipulations. That just means we'll have to make some more punk videos in the future. Alright, so let's talk about some great female-led punk bands. And these are not ranked in any specific way. They're just in the order I felt like talking about them, with the exception of the final band, and I'm putting them there because I feel like they've made one of the best albums of 2024. To start off, let's focus on some bands that I think are going to be making a big splash, but maybe haven't gotten that much attention so far. These are bands that I've had a little bit of trouble finding information about online. It doesn't necessarily say anything about how much I like them, though. First up, Femcell, a trio with a style reminiscent of Riot Girl, who dropped their debut album, Piss Baby, this year. They're from Brooklyn, New York, and you can find their music on Bandcamp, which is going to be true of most of these bands. And then Discount Vodka, a trio from Pueblo, Colorado, who are making kick-ass, no-frills punk rock with catchy riffs. They have no releases on Bandcamp so far, but you can find some great live shows on YouTube, and they have a lot of music on their own YouTube channel. And finally, 18 Fevers, death punk disco from Seoul. They were established in 2021 and have a couple riff-heavy, aggressive EPs out so far. I most highly recommend their newest EP, Cut Me Up. And now for the first band on the official list of 9. The Bobby Lees formed in 2018 in Woodstock, New York. The project began when Sam Quarton went to the local music school and recruited band members there. Although her bandmates are significantly younger, she said the 3 are more reliable and professional than many she'd previously tried to work with in her early projects in New York City. For their first album, 2018's Beauty Pageant, Quarton wrote all of the songs and was having the band help with the creation of them. Then with their follow-up album Skin Suit, it became more of a collaborative writing process with all of the band members involved. I feel like that's where they really started finding their sound, or at least refining it. The Bobby Lees play a garage blues punk that hits a lot of sweet spots for me, like if the Black Keys actually had a bit of an edge to them. They've released 3 EPs at this point, and I'd most strongly recommend their second album, Skin Suit. Produced by John Spencer, an icon of noisy blues punk himself, with bands like Pussy Galore and the John Spencer Blues Explosion, this is full of garage punk and some slower blues numbers as well. They followed this one up with Bellevue, which is equally good, or maybe even better. The pace feels faster overall, still certainly bluesy and garagey though. I'm happy to see that they're embracing the punk side of their sound and not moving away from it as they get more popular, and I'm really excited to see what they do next. Second, let's talk about Snooper. Snooper is a Nashville, Tennessee band that sprouted up during the boredom of the pandemic, which is a theme you might notice in this video. Blair Trammell, frontwoman, and Connor Cummins were a couple trying to entertain themselves, and they started doing some noise experiments and putting them on the internet. This evolved into Snooper, a lo-fi and noisy blast of pure fun. Early on, Trammell was so nervous about the idea of playing live that the rest of the band booked their first gig and only told her about it after the fact. As an introvert myself, my blood pressure's going up just thinking about that. When it comes to their sound, they've expressed the wish to avoid being pigeonholed too much into any lane, either musically or visually. And Trammell has continued to experiment with new creative visuals in their videos and live shows, other than just her puppet work. Because Trammell was already experimenting with making puppets, they started making their way into the videos and into the aesthetic of the band. After the pandemic, they became a part of the live shows, with some of the puppets involved on the stage and some moving around in the audience, like the Super Snooper, which you can see on the album cover for Super Snooper. My intro to this band was their debut album Super Snooper, which is a really fun and fast-paced album. Kind of lo-fi, but somehow feels a little clean too. It's really well produced. This is a kind of music that we probably would have called devocore in the past, but it's more recently taking on a different name, eggpunk. And if you're curious about this genre and want to see a bit of an exploration on it, let me know in the comments. You'll probably get one anyway, because I like it. Number 3, Lambrini Girls. This is a duo from Brighton, England, who formed in 2020. They started as a trio, but have now whittled down to the duo of Phoebe Lunny, vocals and guitar, and Lily Massiera Bosgol, I apologize, and Lily on bass. If you like your punk, political, and pissed off, this is a band for you. They take on issues like misogyny, transphobia, sexual harassment, and a lot of other things in their music, with the vocals spoken or shouted in a style that reminds me a lot of early Idols, Joe Talbot's vocals. Their message is about as subtle as a 2x4 to the temple, but this is punk after all. If you're looking for delicacy, you're probably in the wrong mosh pit. Their debut was the 2023 EP, You're Welcome, which they were able to finance so early on in their careers thanks to an inheritance Lily received when her father passed. They've been open about the privilege of this position, and despite to an extent benefiting from it, still call out the injustice of how much coming from money impacts your ability to thrive in the music industry. Phoebe Lunny has pointed out that if the band hadn't ended up with a member who had the ability to finance making an EP, they'd still likely be operating as a local band. They take on this topic in a song called Filthy Rich Nepo Baby from their upcoming debut album. This upcoming album, Who Let the Dogs Out, was recorded in just 2 weeks between legs of a tour, and is scheduled to come out on January 10th. I hadn't heard anything about them until I saw them keep popping up in the comments for Punk's Not Dead, and then I decided to check them out. But it seems like there was already quite a buzz about them. They've toured with Amyl and the Sniffers and Idols, and they've sat down in conversation with Kathleen Hanna. That's a really interesting back and forth conversation, which I'll put a link to in the description below. So there's a lot of buzz, and you can see that it's happening through conversations online and through other bands that they're playing with. I'm looking forward to hearing their debut album, which is coming out next month. And in the meantime, I encourage you to check out their EP, which is quite good. The next band I want to talk about is also a bit of an activist band, from Tijuana, Mexico. As a quick aside, the last time I did a video on punk, I included some bands that had feminist perspectives or that included trans people or black people, and I got a lot of fascinating comments calling either me or the bands communist and woke. Yes, somebody did say that black people being in a punk band is woke. Apparently everything's a little too sanitized now, people aren't allowed to express themselves anymore, which was a bit of a head scratcher for me since they were complaining about other people expressing themselves. So to all of those people making those comments, I'd just like to say, I'm very sorry. You got so triggered, you poor little snowflakes. My goal with this channel isn't to talk about politics, it's really to talk about bands that I like and sort of talk my way through a mixtape, basically. Encourage you to listen to some new things that you might not know about and to learn about them from you. And I would think that if you get very easily triggered by certain messages in your music, it would actually be a benefit to you to know about them before you sat down to listen to the music. So maybe try taking it that way instead of throwing a fit on the internet. And if you find yourself taking all of this a little bit too seriously, maybe you should take a break, maybe take a nap or go outside. Anyway, on with the fourth band. Violencia. This is going to be the most hardcore band I'm going to cover in this one. They make a blend of power violence and hardcore that fits the band's name quite well. Gobi Longobardi is the vocalist, and she's written about the way Tijuana is a place of different merging cultures, on the border of Mexico and the United States. Longobardi went to punk shows in San Diego as a kid, and also in Tijuana. It was a mixing of cultures, and she learned English through the constant flow of tourists into her city, and the television channels from the US that reached Tijuana. Their music, on the most basic level, is some very hardcore. They include some power violence in their sound, and there are also some slower, doomy passages mixed in, keeping the songs that are already quite short, quite varied in how they sound as well. They released their debut album, Viviendo Tiempos Aún Más Oscuros, I apologize, in 2023. On it, they blast through 12 tracks in about 18 minutes, with most clocking in at under 2 minutes. The songs are a reflection of modern politics, with the single Mundo Polarizado focused on the way modern media, including social media, serves to polarize and turn everything into a two-sided issue. It ends with a line that translates to "I'm no part of this," reflecting their wish to escape this polarized way of thinking. Reflecting on this song, they say, "We battle each other without addressing or fighting the system itself. that is becoming more and more absolute. Longobardi has talked about how the music of the band allows her to express emotions that she feels like would be discouraged coming from her in other social contexts like anger and despair about society. But she's also talked about how the band empowers her and makes her feel more confident in expressing some of her views. Anyway, if you enjoy the harsher side of punk, or power violence, or even grindcore, I feel like you should give this band a listen. If you want to break from politics, then take a trip to Tokyo to see Toranoko Rammy, our fifth band. This four-piece band formed in 2013. I wasn't able to find a lot of information about them in English on the internet, but they make an infectious, catchy pop punk that includes some elements of ska as well, some horn passages. It reminds me of some bands from the 90s, a little bit like No Doubt, maybe a touch of Green Day. This isn't necessarily the type of punk I would usually gravitate towards, but the musicianship is really strong, and so are some of the songs, so it does pull me in. And the powerful vocals really help to make it stand out. And by the way, they don't consider themselves a punk band because of the anarchistic and political connotations of the term. They instead refer to themselves as a 3D safari rock band. And this is why we shouldn't just take a band's word for what kind of music they make. Like many bands on this list, they're not yet successful enough to do the music thing full time, and are all currently working quote-unquote real jobs as well. Are they safari tour guides? I don't know. What I do know is they finally released their debut album in 2023, entitled Drip of Rammy. Drip is a very unappetizing word, isn't it? You could start your 3D safari with this album, but their 2016 EP is where I began, and I enjoyed it maybe a touch more. Both are fun, fast-paced melodic punk, but the EP feels a little rougher around the edges. When it comes to punk, that's often a plus for me. This journey's all over the map because now we're in Auckland, New Zealand, to talk about Dick Move, band number 6. Dick Move haven't caught on that massively outside of New Zealand and Australia. In fact, I had trouble finding articles about them from any source outside the region. They've toured with Foo Fighters and the Breeders in New Zealand recently, so hopefully awareness of them is growing. I started listening to this one thanks to a comment on the Punk's Not Dead video, and I've really been enjoying their catchy blend of poppy party punk since then. It reminds me a little bit of Amyl and the Sniffers, but it's distinct in its own way. The lead vocalist, Lucy Sutter, has lyrics that are sharp and witty and pick apart things like incels and hypermasculinity and gender norms. Where should you start with them? Well, they have two albums, Chop from 2020 and Wet from 2023. Both are good, but I feel like their songwriting has improved over time, so I slightly prefer Wet. With that said though, if you listen to them both together, it'll take you like 40 minutes, so that's what I'd probably recommend. And next, I believe this was the most suggested band that would fit this topic. And if you're wondering, the most suggested band that doesn't fit this topic was The Chats. But Scowl does fit the topic, and they're band number 7. Scowl is an American hardcore band from Santa Cruz, California. They formed and released their first EP in 2019. The band is known for their powerful live shows, and they're the second band I've discussed on this channel who had a minor breakthrough because of a viral live set recorded in a Sonic Hamburgers parking lot. Kat Moss is their spitfire of a vocalist, who growls and shouts out the lyrics with a venomous bite. However, when the moment is right, she can also shift into clean singing, which I believe she does a total of once on their debut album, during the song Seeds to Sow. How Flowers Grow, the debut album, came out in 2021, and when I say full length, I mean a full 15 minutes. They tend to keep songs and releases short and sweet, and their output in studio material is probably impacted by how steadily they tour. They followed this one up with 2023's Psychic Dance Routine EP. This has a little bit stronger of hooks and is maybe a little bit slowed down from the first album. Their popularity's been on the rise ever since their debut album came out, and Kat Moss has talked about the challenges of this, about how it made her reevaluate just how vulnerable she wanted to be in her lyrics, just how much she was willing to share with the world. Based on the newest EP, Psychic Dance Routine, it feels like the answer that she eventually came around to was she's willing to be very vulnerable. The new EP also shows the band balancing their hardcore side with more of a pop sensibility as well. There's more clean vocals on this one and a little bit more in the way of hooks. I would suggest that first album if you're looking for something that's quite hardcore, and the EP is probably a good entry point if you're wanting something a little subtler. And next, for band number 8, let's talk about Die Spitz from Austin, Texas. This band's very new, but is off to a really stunning start. They formed in 2022, and in that short time, they've toured with Off, Destroy Boys, Sleater Kinney, and Amyl and the Sniffers. 3 of the band members, Ava, Ellie, and Kate, have been good friends for years, and had joked about starting a band, but the 3 of them got more serious about it during the boredom of pandemic lockdown. Kate had been playing the violin previously, but she switched to bass, and the three were making music inspired by some of their favorite bands, like Black Sabbath, Nirvana, and Meat Puppets. Some time passed, and their sound gelled more before they found Chloe Andrews, the drummer they needed to realize the sound they were going for. And what is that sound? It has some punk to it, so I see why they come up in conversations about punk, but it's also heavily influenced by early metal and alternative bands, so I'd call them more of a rock band with a punk attitude. The band themselves don't like being labeled as a punk band, and in this case I feel like the band's right. They're definitely more of a 3D Safari rock band. No, I'd class them more with modern bands like Drug Church, Horrors, and other bands that blend a broad set of influences that include Nirvana and other 90s artists. At this point, Die Spitz has a reputation for high-energy shows, and they have a pair of very strong releases so far. From watching some of their shows online, and from a few of the interviews, I found it really refreshing to see a band that's so obviously good friends, who seem to just be having fun and doing whatever kind of music they want to.
Ow, it should be like, ow. An aggressively long solo.
I really hope they can maintain that attitude and that approach throughout their career, and I'm excited to see where they go from here. Since they only have an EP and one album, I recommend trying out both. My preference is their debut album, Teeth, but this is another situation where you can hear everything they've done in an hour, and it's all quite good. Finally, let's talk about a band that has been impressing me for a while, but who really killed it in 2024. Band number 9 is Mannequin Pussy, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They formed in 2010, so they're one of the older bands on this list. This was why I didn't give myself any particular parameters as far as how old the bands could be for this one. I wanted to be able to talk about this band since they made one of my very favorite albums this year. The band was formed by Marissa Missy Dabiche and Athanasios Paul. I apologize. They've had some turnover since then, and the current band is a 4-piece, with Paul having departed in 2021. From the beginning, they were a band with a good bit of range. Their self-titled debut is a fuzzy album with a garage punk feel to it, but even at this point they were already fluctuating from what was clearly punk rock to what sounds a bit more indie or garage rock focused. Dabiche has a wonderfully melodic singing voice and a powerful stage presence. They released their debut album in 2013 as a cassette-only release. Then it received an official release on Tiny Engines in 2014. They spent 5 years on Tiny Engines Records before the label went defunct after not paying many of its artists for some time, including Mannequin Pussy. After this, they signed to Epitaph Records. 2019 was a watershed year for them, with the release of their third album, Patience. This one showed them bringing in a lot more of pop sensibilities, a little bit more indie rock into their sound, blending more with the punk and the garage rock of earlier releases. Patience is also where I found out about them and started following them. I have a feeling that this is the era that a lot of people found out about them and started listening. And then 2024 saw the release of their fourth album, I Got Heaven. This had the musical range of Patience, but even more so with even stronger songwriting in my opinion. It feels like they still have the attitude of punk, but you couldn't call all of what they're doing now punk. They're blending in enough things that we just kind of have to think of them as a rock band. There's elements of power pop, shoegaze, so much going on in these songs. Instead of all of this feeling all over the place, though, it's all brought together by Dabiche's lyrics, which are sometimes vulnerable, sometimes political, covering just the range of what she's experiencing. The title I Got Heaven came in part from an epiphany Dabiche had while traveling. The sense that as much as humans have sacrificed the world around us for the sake of profit and selfish desires, it's still the most beautiful place any of us could hope to experience. To quote Dabiche, if you were to spend just one day with your eyes fully open, you would see that the natural world which we coexist with, and our relationships to other people, are some of the most beautiful and enriching experiences we get to have. And this whole idea of what heaven is, how could it be anything other than what's already here? Let's stop there, since that's a positive little note to end on. I hope you enjoy your own little piece of heaven in the end of 2024, and please go listen to the new Mannequin Pussy album, I Got Heaven. As I said, that last one was one of my favorite albums from this last year. I think it's probably in my top 3. If you're curious what the other albums might be on that list, that's what I'm going to be talking about next time. So subscribe if you want to see what topped my list for 2024, and I'll be bringing that to you in the beginning of 2025. It's bound to be an eclectic list. Thanks for watching Eclecticism, and happy holidays.